So
Yeah.
guys, we're kind of out of time on this bit, but maybe maybe David Booth's gonna talk about this. I've got my tongue in my cheek here. Maybe David's going to talk about why our strategies don't contain goal congruence innately. That's a massively unfair fair thing to throw at you, David. But Veronica's given us a PMO perspective of prioritization, and uh, so what's the strategist perspective, David? David, please start where you want.
Uh, do I start by rising to the bait there, David? In terms of what you say with that,
Entirely up to you.
right. I liked a couple of things. Kieran's comment about how strategy is translated into something that people can make decisions against, and your point about goal congruence and understanding, and about the honesty and alignment and time for conversations, I think resonated with me. So, from if like a strategist perspective, or strategy perspective, um, quite important to say that strategy is not about formulation. Strategy isn't just about the formulation, the designing, the thinking, the analysis, whatever that sets the direction. In fact, the IASP, International Association of Strategy Professionals, body of knowledge has essentially formulate, transform, execute, engage, and govern as being key aspects of its model for doing it. And all of this should happen at the same time. I have very, very first principles, common sense approach to strategy. My definition of strategy work in an organization is how people in an organization make sense of where it's going and how it's going to get there. So there's four questions really. Where are we now? Where do we want to go? How do we get there? And how do we make it happen? And that perspective, that last couple of perspectives is absolutely crucial when it comes to the prioritization, the allocation of resources. What are you focusing on? And how are you measuring progress? And the old traditional view of strategic planning or the process of being ending with a document that's then handed over to the organization is way out of the way in which sort to look at and how you think about it in the organization. It's part of the ongoing process about how you're going to implement and how you're going to adjust as that implementation progresses. So just going back to things that were said, the political elements, the difference between interpretation, where strategy can often break down is in allowing that different interpretation to occur, allowing fragmentation to occur when different departments or different people take different views, and that includes the political, and allowing things to get diluted, which is when you've often got a case where projects are added and brought in place with that so-called this is strategic because it's important because I want it done type analysis. So in developing a strategy, in the strategy work of organization, the really important thing is how do you make it clear what the strategy is, what the key elements of that are, and how you then maintain that as the focus for everything that you do in terms of that implementation of the strategy. So there's a couple of tools and techniques that you often see within a strategy document. There are, people are very fond these days of pillars, of Greek temples approaches, and that's okay. Personally, I've often used themes which describe more dynamic focal points of actions and themes that have to be, not many, but very simple, clear stories and themes that are kept in mind. And the key thing is that within a strategy is an organization at a particular period of time is whatever helps that organization to get to the next stage. And it's the story about how it's developed that needs to keep being told at every level and referred to. And I think people have commented about the lack of understanding of strategy, the lack of understanding about whether something meets the strategy or not. The simple, the crafting, the articulation of simple, clear, direct themes, statements, whatever, that are continually reinforced and repeated and told throughout the organization in every conversation, every meeting, every part of the management is absolutely key in taking through and reminding where it fits in. And it becomes the tool, becomes the language by which, if you like, reality is translated or conversations occur by which conflict of priorities or conflict of resources can be at least stand a chance of being measured against. I've seen in too many cases where a strategic planning process has ended up 6 months down the line with the board reviewing a 3 or 4 pages of red, amber, green RAG documentations on projects. And I think for Veronica, you said, people are looking at whether project delivery is on target and success rather than the project being a success. Well, going back to that, if you like, that focus on that theme, the focus on the key thing about the measures are, it's not about whether every aspect is on target. It's about whether the value or the direction or whatever is in those themes is being achieved. And focusing on those measures is absolutely crucial. Those top level measures and everything adjusted against that. And the other, a lot of my work recently has been in terms of helping organizations strengthen their strategy capabilities. And part of that is how you create the time for the communication and the flow of strategy within the organization and the conversations that you have to have. And that's in terms of all levels, the strategy conversations and informing those conversations with referring back to the theme. This is our objective. This is the strategic objective. Continuity of the organization provides a framework for having that and having that discussion. It's never going to be perfect, but at least it stands a chance by creating that ability to have the conversations and to ask the questions and to have those perspectives come in and the organization be able to work it through. And it also provides that communication flow in a dynamic two-way process. Veronica, you said that PMO is in a great position to see where the conflicts are occurring and to be able to feed that back. And you need that conduit, that mechanism, that willingness to have those conversations back to the board, rather than that distinction that says, this is somebody else, this is going through. It's that flow going back. And increasingly, the flow that says, this needs changing. This, because internally, externally, resources. Strategy today is dynamic in an organization. It isn't fixed. So building those flows, building those capabilities, having that focus, that clarity, having that simplicity to guide the organization on its next actions and having that dynamic approach is absolutely critical in terms of effective strategy within an organization. So that's my personal perspective in terms of how to approach strategy and the importance of thinking it through and continuing to have those conversations and something to refer to and latch onto.
Hi. That was
Alex, dive in.
very interesting, David. I'm a very simple pragmatist. If you don't want to answer this question, just say no comment. So, magic wand, genie's magic lamp. I'm the chairman of some big company, PLC, FTSE 250, whatever, and I'm coming to you and saying, I've got these board directors. We understand, or I understand the philosophy that you've just been espousing, and it's great, but it's not working. So, 1 to 3 things. How do I get my board of directors to get on board with this and make it happen?
It's interesting, Alex, because one of the salutary experiences that I had, um, and I was within working within the organization many years ago, was when I was in a situation, but there wasn't a chairman that was saying that. There was a board of directors which was very keen in following an organizational change with a new division of the organization, effectively, to drive things forward, to move, to get a strategic plan, to get a strategy clarified, to work together to do that. And they wanted to solve this within 3 months, to get a plan together and to crack on. Invited a number of consultants to come in and to present how they would help them to achieve this. And people came in. I'll show you how long ago it was. It was all on overhead transparencies. With week 1, you do this, week 2, you do this, and this is what you link in. Somebody came in from what was then called Ashridge, had a blank sheet of paper and said, exactly do you want to achieve? And the point that refers back to your challenge, Alex, and your question, was that in going around and asking the question around the table, every single director, every single member of that board had a different perspective on what it was. And the organization then spent, the realization was there that you didn't start thinking about the strategy. You started working on the conversations about the values and the perspectives and where people were coming from on the individuals on that board. So going back to your chairman question and the role, you start by having that understanding that not everybody is on the same page, and you have those conversations to set out the template to move forward. It takes time, but strategy takes time. And the critical thing, to my mind, there are 3 key things within strategy as a perspective. There's perspectives, being able to take the different perspectives that you have, whether it's internally, externally, stakeholders, whatever. There's questions, being able to formulate questions and continually to formulate questions and work out how to answer them. And most important of all, there's the rich conversations and creating space for those conversations at whatever level to resolve. And that is the hardest, because people are busy, people are doing things, they want to get on. We're all in so task focused and achievement focused, but those conversations are so important and so valuable, whether it's working out on different priorities, different resource allocations, getting the values right, whatever it may be. Conversations and engineering them and creating the time for them is so important.
Has anyone else got a comment or a question in relation to the role of the strategist in the connection of strategy delivery and prioritization? Anyone got any observations as to how strategy works, or that cascade doesn't work, perhaps in their organization?
I felt David did touch on something we hadn't actually talked much about otherwise there, which was about the communication of it. I have found in organisations where there is that constant reinforcing, it's not sufficient. but it does help. It genuinely does help. If there's a whole spectrum between we have no idea if we even have a strategy through to, yes, everybody's bored rigid because we start every meeting with the down PowerPoint, you're probably better off on this end of things. It solves some of the problem. It goes some way towards.
But it's then how do you get resources? It's that gap, isn't it, between the repeated conversations and being told and the communications and what ends up having resource put on it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Sorry, David.
I was going to say it's not. Don't put up the PowerPoint with the pillars or necessarily the themes or the mission statement or vision. Have the conversation. The words are more powerful when you start them. And as a leader in an organization, whatever level that leader is, being able to articulate very clearly that this is, and reinforce that this is what the organization is. This is strategy. This is if you call it a theme or an objective, whatever. This is the value. Those conversations are far more powerful than having plaques behind reception and waving thick documents of strategic plans.
I don't disagree with any of that, David. I really don't. But I do find that, there's multiple sort of problems to unpick here. And one, awareness is helpful. And two, actually, if we think about, everybody at ground level, it is actually quite helpful collateral. The organisation, I can come to you and I can say, every meeting we talk about this thing I'm working on does not align to this thing. But this other thing I could be working on does align to this one. It is actually quite helpful for people on the ground up.
Fair enough. Absolutely. I was thinking more about the power of a leader coming through rather than imposing it. But of course, it's useful and the simplicity in every strategic planning process that I've done with organizations. There's been one articulation, one diagram, one simple thing that has resonated, that people have latched onto and resonated. And that it can be simply that, or it's a simple thing that people then respond to and they go back to, and it becomes that platform. It's that articulation that reinforces. It's quite interesting, the power of simplicity and the power of clarity and the power of continual reinforcement, storytelling, and communication can help enormously.
If there's one comment I can make, I think even more compared to the number of TVs that we have that display strategy, or number of communications that we have, or number of SharePoint sites and pages we can write about it, what actually makes strategy embed is if it is there in the day-to-day lives of the people, in the tools that they actually do their work on. If you're able to bring strategy to that level, for example, if this is our strategic life cycle for the next 5 years, this is how we go through, or these are all our layers of outcomes, as David Pictures talks about, if it is embedded in the systems of work, then that strategic translation becomes more transparent and more understandable, and getting behind it becomes a lot easier than the number of town halls or TVs, like you're saying, David, about, or the number of things that we can communicate on our internet sites. They're good, but I don't believe they're sufficient enough until strategy embeds in the day-to-day work through all the means and tools that people use.
And just to add to that, strategy isn't about change.
No,
it's not about initiatives or different initiatives. It's also about the so-called business as usual. That's the core. And whether the articulation that engages people is a purpose, I'm serving this, or I'm achieving this, or it's this is what we're doing to move forward. It can vary by organization. Every organization is different. Every organization is different at different times, different needs, and strategy has to be useful. Strategy has to guide what's next on the organization's strategy journey, for want of a better term. And to see it like that, rather than a periodic 3-year, 5-year, whatever it is, set and change. To see it as that, and to have the confidence in leadership to see it as that process and to see it as being something that you're continually improving. It's not perfect. You're continually improving how you get that integration, how you get that accountability, how you have that data flow, how you have that systems, how you have those conversations. It's not something that's either right or wrong. It's having that willingness to learn and to improve in an organization that's the dynamic that helps an organization to grow and develop its capabilities to do this better.